Hey there, scabby scummers and gangers. Crimson Oracle here, coming to you with another intro to Necromunda video. This time we're going to be talking about the various campaign formats in Necromunda. Of course, before we get started, I wanted to mention that you should like the video and subscribe if you want to see more of my content, because that is how this channel grows, and I'm looking to grow this channel, so you guys can really help me out. Getting back to the point, we are going to be talking about the different campaign formats of Necromunda today. So, of course, there are a bunch, but not all are currently available. So I'm going to talk about the ones that are available first, and then I'll mention the ones that are no longer available after that. And then I'm going to mention a couple that are fan created that I recommend checking out as well. I'm partial to one because I wrote it. But regardless, there are a bunch of campaign formats for Necromunda. The one that most people are familiar with and play first is the Dominion campaign. This is a campaign featuring a wide variety of campaign territories that players fight over. And there's 26 different types of territory. There are 3 that are specific to each of the house gangs, that if they're controlled by a gang of that house, they get extra benefits. And then there's 8 generic ones. And all of these different locations provide slightly different benefits. Now, this campaign is a bit of bookkeeping. You do have to keep track of what all of the boons from your territories are, and of course, you have to sort of control who is challenging for what territory. So you have to come up with a system for who challenges first and all of that, so that everyone isn't all challenging over the same thing. Unless you want to play a multiplayer game, in which case everybody can challenge over the same thing. And of course, this system is a little bit repetitive in terms of the benefits. A lot of the things just give like, oh, here's a hanger on, or here is a credit payout. It's not a particularly there's not that much variety of benefits. There are a few that give very specific benefits, and that can also be a bit of a downside, because some of those territories can really throw the balance of things off. If you are playing with players who are interested in keeping the campaign relatively competitive, then you might want to have some kind of limits on that. You could have, for example, the boon wear off after like 3 turns of having it, or what have you, because then there is less incentive for people to kind of greedily grip onto the best territories. But that's just an idea that I had to make that system work a little smoother if you have those kind of players. There is, of course, the Law and Misrule Campaign, which is printed in the Book of Judgment, which is a really fun campaign system that has like a ton of wacky. They're called rackets. They are essentially jobs that people do around the hive, and then gangs are either they're either law-abiding or they're criminal, and that means that your players will kind of choose what kind of a gang they want to play, and then they will get different missions and stuff, like secondary missions, essentially, or secondary objectives for missions that they are trying to achieve. And if you can manage to achieve them, you can gain a bunch of benefits. But they will sometimes require you to test whether you remain in the good graces of the law, or remain a criminal who's considered a real hardened criminal. You can get tossed out of the criminal underworld, essentially. It's a really fun system, but it is bonkers complicated. There are tons of things going on. And the system starts out with you already owning a bunch of rackets, so you gain income quick, and the game is crazy as a result. It's fun. It's so much fun, but it's a bit wild. So That one I don't recommend as your first campaign because it's so all over the place, but it can be a lot of fun if you have a big collection and you don't mind expanding your gang rapidly. Otherwise, of course, it would be possible to just put limits on the amount of income players can gain each round or what have you. A maximum income for a campaign would actually be an interesting kind of mechanic to experiment with in that particular campaign. Of course, there is the Outlands campaign, which we saw come out in the Book of the Outcast. This is a campaign that is based around a really, really cool concept of establishing your own base and starting a little town around it. Anyone who's played Fallout 4 or The Sims is familiar with this concept. It is a really fun idea. It offers you the opportunity to have kind of a sense of place about where your games are actually taking place. Like there is one that, you put your settlement in an effluviant runoff zone. There is an old ghost town that, is no longer occupied that you could take over. That's a well-known location. There is, a pit that you can build at the bottom of. You can build on like the outskirts of the hive. I mean, it's a really cool concept. And then each location starts with a fuel rod for heat and power and a water spring, a water source of some kind. And those two things allow it to sort of grow, and you then get income from your various infrastructure that you build that you can then spend on more infrastructure. The missions in the book also offer rewards of material that you can then use to build. And this campaign system is really cool. I haven't had a chance to run it yet, but I am thinking that I'm going to switch the rules that we're using in the campaign we're currently playing to that with my core group that I've been playing with for a couple of years now. We are going to each kind of build a town, and I'm going to look forward to building scenery to kind of match the various bits of infrastructure that everybody builds. And I'm sure some things that I already have will match up, but I'm really excited to have that sort of modeling challenge before me. So really stoked to try that out. Then, of course, there's the Ash Waste campaign. This is a really cool system because it is designed around controlling roadways. And you can then use your territories essentially to cut people off from stuff, which is really fun. This is located in the Ash Waste box set. Unfortunately, it's currently the only way to get it. I'm hoping that they release it separately at some point, but you never can tell with this stuff, as we're going to get into when I talk about the out of production campaigns. And then I will say that the campaign system is a lot of it's a lot about sort of place and kind of existing in a context, which is really cool. As I was kind of saying about the previous campaign, this one actually even has a map that you can use, and you get different types of roadways, and then you can get benefits from them and use them to block your opponents from accessing stuff. And I obviously haven't had a chance to play it yet because my box set won't arrive for a few more days. But a lot of people are starting to try it out, and I'm really excited to kind of dig into the rules for that one. I'm thinking about integrating both Ash Waste and the Outlands campaign together. When I figure out how I'm going to do that, I will definitely do a video about that. Now, those are the in production campaigns from GW, and they are each interesting and kind of fun in their own way. The Dominion campaign is a fun starter campaign that gets a little bit boring when you start to, want more variety. The Law and Misrule campaign is a over the top campaign for people who have a lot of minis and who want to, do crazy stuff. The Outlands campaign is definitely one of the most fun in terms of role playing and conceptualizing kind of your terrain building and contextualizing your terrain building. And then, of course, there is the Ash Waste campaign, which is focused on playing out in the roadways because there's just not that much else out there to even try to hold the territory for. So the roads kind of are the only resource. The two that are no longer in production are the Turf War campaign, which came in the softcover Gang War 1 book that was released alongside Necromunda Underhive, the relaunch of the current edition. That book had a campaign system which I actually think was pretty cool in that it was really, really simple. It was stripped down to kind of, you just gained turf, which was a resource that determined the amount of income that you would make. And then you would occasionally, very occasionally, win an additional territory. Those territories had benefits that would activate after each round of the campaign, but they were not such that they were kind of contributing after every battle the way that it does in the Dominion campaign. So it was less impactful overall. I would definitely recommend, if you can get your hands on it, considering it as an option for a starting campaign. We'll get to it in a minute, but I used part of it as my inspiration for doing my campaign. And then there is the Uprising campaign, which was located in the Dark Uprising box set, and was, in my opinion, a really, really brilliant campaign system that it was just not that suitable as a starter campaign. It got kind of a bad rep. And the reality is that it's a really cool idea. You're in a hive that is descending into chaos because of an uprising amongst the laborers. And you have people who are fighting for the forces of destruction, and you have people who are fighting for the forces of order. And those groups of people are, each contributing each week to which of the sides is winning. And it's really clever. Over time, you lose access to pretty much everything and find yourself, hoarding meat in order to survive. And when that happens, you can start sacrificing your own guys to eat. It's absurd and dark and horrific, but the game is about storytelling. Not every story has a happy ending. I wouldn't recommend taking your favorite gang that has all the characters that you love into this particular campaign system, but could you imagine taking your least favorite champion and giving them a spin-off gang and having them go into a neighboring hive and find themselves caught in the middle of essentially a horror movie? I think that would be a lot of fun. I think the campaign is a lot of fun if you approach it with that mindset. But sadly, it's not readily available. So, if you could track it down, which there are ways, either buying the old rule book or finding, a resource where someone has written out all of the rules, those are a really cool resource, and it would be a really fun thing to run, say, for the month of October. Do a shortened version even, where it gets darker even faster. One round of one round of normal, and then 3 weeks of the end phase where everyone's scrounging for meat, and no one can buy anything. And that's all of the different campaigns that GW has done for this edition of Necromunda. There are also two that I wanted to mention that were made by fans. One was made by Goonhammer. It's based around starting with a small crew. It's called the Mini-Munda Campaign, and the idea behind it is to start with literally a champion and some gangers and fight your way through a series of very linear progressions. Also, what's really cool about it, you're starting with a relatively small number of fighters, so it gives you the opportunity to really get a feel for each fighter's rules, and then as you add more gear, you get a good sense of what all of it does. This is a really fantastic campaign to run for a group who are literally all just first-time players who don't know the system at all. So I definitely recommend checking that out. I've put a link down in the description below for folks to take a look at that. Of course, the campaign that I wrote, which is the Guild War campaign, and is based around the idea of the gangs fighting over territory in a newly discovered dome that has been lost for centuries, and everyone is making a mad scramble to sort of take this derelict, just absolutely desolate place and turn it into somewhere livable. So the players are fighting over, pretty much empty space, with very occasionally finding like rare finds that are significantly better. And it is a relatively simple campaign system, and it's based around the idea of two opposing sides between two different guilds who are trying to be the one to get the contract to administer the dome. It's based on the novel Fire Made Flesh by Denny Flowers, and I think it's a fun system. I put a bunch of time and effort into putting it together, so check that out, of course. And with that, I think I've covered everything I wanted to in the span of this video. So thank you for watching. And of course, thank you to my patrons who make this show possible and who make this show fun. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe in order to get more of my content. If you would like to become a patron and help support the show, you can do so for as little as $2 a month. Just pop over to patreon.com and look for Dome Runners. And of course, last but not least, don't forget to check out the podcast. I have a ton of episodes of stuff about Necromunda. I am loving delving into that kind of content, and I have, just a ton of material. So check that out. Everybody stay safe, and don't forget to change your paint water.